Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. I'm Boris Tizenghausen. Today is August 24th. The main news as of this moment. Today is a special day for every Ukrainian. З Днем Незалежності, українці. За нашу свободу і незалежність щодня віддають життя найкраще. Я дякую кожному, хто захищає Україну, хто тримає тил і хто не здається і не втрачає віри. Ми вистоїмо і переможемо, бо це наше право вирішувати своє майбутнє. З Днем Незалежності, українці. Слава Україні і героям слава! Today, August 24th, British Prime Minister Andy Burnham arrived in Kyiv and announced a significant expansion of British aid, specifically in the area of long-range weapons. Very timely and very good news. What is the decision? London has authorized the company MBDA to transfer secret technical information about the British components of the SCALP missile so that France and Ukraine can set up the assembly of this missile directly in Ukraine. There is also information that the UK will transfer additional long-range strike assets to Ukraine, which will be used to destroy Russian launch systems. And I will also remind you that Britain is leading another special project for Ukraine, Project Breakthrough, a program to create relatively cheap, ground-based long-range weapons. The requirements of the British Ministry of Defence are a range of at least 500 kilometers, a warhead of at least 225 kilograms, and a speed of over 600 kilometers per hour. 3 British prototypes have already passed flight tests. The next stage involves the manufacturing of improved missiles, launch vehicles, and testing in Ukraine. Huge thanks to everyone who is helping Ukraine during this very, very difficult time for us. I think after news like this, Medvedev has probably just been blown to pieces into alcohol molecules against the walls. He hasn't been coming out of his drinking binges lately anyway, by the way. He's gotten quite gloomy. And let me remind you, friends, you can subscribe to this channel right now. It is important. We are fighting against Putin's propaganda. We will do it together, and we will do it effectively. So make sure to subscribe. And it's not just this that will blow Medvedev apart. This morning, Madhyar congratulated the Kremlin's Botoxed jellyfish, and what a way to congratulate. Overnight, 3 large Ozon warehouses were attacked at once. Today, our drones were met in Krasnodar, in Nevinomysk, in Dagestan, and they were also met at the Millerovo military airfield. So, in Tubey, which is in Dagestan, the largest Ozon logistics center in the North Caucasus, with an area of 130,000 square meters, burned down completely, just to zero, and that is, for a second, 800 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. I'll show you an epic video right now. It's called "Here Comes Another Drone Flying into Our Warehouse." Take a look. In my opinion, the cameraman here deserves an Oscar. And here is another video where I can't tell if the cameramen are happy or sad. Maybe you can write in the comments. Maybe you'll understand. Take a look. And to put that sheer scale into perspective for you, that is roughly equivalent to the size of 12 full-sized football fields just going up in flames. It's 400 kilometers to Ukraine, a bit closer. In short, and there's also a third warehouse in Nevinomysk that's in the Stavropol territory. It's also 93,500 square meters. Anyway, I don't know. Some kind of triple jackpot. And now the Millerovo airfield has also been hit by our drones, an active military airfield. Let me remind you, Russian fighter aviation is based there, and a MiG-29 was destroyed there at night. And now, the main thing about Ozon. In one night, -3 major logistics centers. That is, the market reacted instantly. In the morning, Ozon shares fell by 12.5%, and a little later by almost 30%. Yes, the entire Russian market reacted. That is, at this rate, Ozon will cease to exist much faster than Wildberries. The sellers there, by the way, are outraged. How can this be? Government, what is happening? Where is the air defense? There was a whole month to prepare when Wildberries burned down, and no one prepared. Can you imagine? And you won't prepare. All the air defense was taken to protect the Botoxed field ass and the oil refineries. That's it. What the lovers of the Russian world are constantly proud of. The huge Russia, which they call great, is simply big. In other words, what the lovers of the Russian world are proud of, that Russia is big, has played a cruel joke on them. To protect a big Russia, you need a huge amount of air defense assets, but they don't exist, and every day the ones that are left are being destroyed. By the way, today they took out another dozen or so radar stations and radars on Russian territory and in the occupied territories. In short, they won't let the underground ghoul breathe easy. Ukraine is performing an incredible feat. In every episode, we have an important fundraiser for the defense forces of Ukraine. Today, we are continuing the fundraiser together with the patronage service of the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade, Angels of Azov, a fundraiser for the treatment and rehabilitation of severely wounded soldiers with neurotrauma. Please watch this video.
Мій позивний Рута, і я медичний куратор патронатної служби Янголи Трійки. Ми збираємо кошти на лікування та реабілітацію важко поранених бійців з нейротравмами. Ціль – 1 мільйон гривень. Ці хлопці вже віддали своє здоров'я, захищаючи нас. Зараз вони щодня борються за те, щоб знову ходити, говорити і жити. І кожна гривня – це реальний шанс повернути їм життя. Долучайтеся до збору.
Let's help our warriors. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video, and there is a QR code in the corner if you are watching me on other channels. It is important to remember not just on this day that there are those who gave their health for the freedom and independence of our country. And even though it's difficult, they are still recovering, and it is in our power to help them. Therefore, I strongly urge you to join this fundraiser. In every episode, I say a special thank you from myself and from the hundreds of soldiers you have already helped. You are just, well, incredible. Thank you so much. It seems to me that Russians still don't realize that this winter Ukraine won't be striking their warehouses. Well, I mean, it will strike the warehouses, but that won't be the priority target, because at this rate, the warehouses will be finished by winter. And Wildberries and Ozon and Yandex Market and whatever else they have, everything will be finished. What was that plush mackerel saying the other day? Ukraine has opened Pandora's box. He opened Pandora's box when he attacked Ukraine. In his case, it's Pandora's suitcase. When they bombed our energy infrastructure in the winter, when they bombed our cities all these years, that's when he opened his Pandora's suitcase. Those who have been watching me for a long time won't let me lie. As soon as they started hitting Wildberries, I immediately said that Ozon was just a matter of time. Does anyone among the Russians doubt now that after the warehouses they will go after Russian thermal power plants and stations, and in response to the shelling of Ukraine they will strike exactly at them? I think that all the routes have already been worked out and the necessary supply of resources has been prepared. Our partners have joined in. This winter, I think Russians will sadly remember the warehouses and oil refineries that burned for days, where one could at least warm up for free. And what was the point of attacking? Is there any understanding now? Has it dawned on them? Or do Russians still not know? Do you know what the version is now among the lovers of the Russian world? There isn't one. They are constantly getting confused. We attacked them to save them and so that they wouldn't attack us. But when we attacked them, it turns out they also attacked us later. And now the goal of this so-called SMO is the preservation of Russia in a confrontation with NATO or, with Ukraine and 50 other countries. Although Ukraine isn't actually in NATO, but that doesn't bother anyone. And by the way, Russia has excellent relations with Donald Trump, the president of the main NATO country, the backbone of NATO, and until recently, the spirit of anchorage even hovered between them. So how can a fan of the Russian world make sense of all this? Meanwhile, a real gasoline crisis has crept up on Russia. Attempts to say that everything will be fixed in a couple of weeks, that everything will be fine now, have failed, and Putin even came out and said, there are some little problems, but they are being solved. That's all he could mumble with those dentures of his. Well, that was clear from the very beginning. Like when Putin said, a few days and everything will be restored now. You've had almost 50% of your oil refining capacity knocked out, but Russia had a month's worth of reserves to compensate for the deficit. So, in order to fix it in a month, or say in a week that everything will be fixed, it means Russia would have had to repair all the refineries or buy the necessary volume of fuel, a gigantic volume of fuel, from somewhere else. At the same time, Ukraine didn't stop. It continued to take out oil refining capacities, and Russia physically cannot buy the necessary volume. There is no such volume, and no one is willing to sell it to a sanctioned country. That is everything that Morocco, who else, Belarus, India have sold to Russia. All of that is only enough for 1 day of consumption in Russia. And so, a real harsh wave of fuel crisis has finally hit after a month, once Russia had devoured all its fuel reserves. Do you understand what was Putin aiming at when he said that everything would be sorted out? It was obvious from the very beginning. Just like in Crimea, that half-wit Aksyonov, when the occupation authorities, represented by this Aksyonov, were saying that everything would be sorted out in a few days. Who were they trying to fool? Logistics have been cut off, reserves have been destroyed. Where were you planning to get gasoline from? I don't understand. And now, when Russians themselves are severely short of it, do you think anyone will risk their life to bring it to occupied Crimea? Well, a couple of fuel trucks might break through, but where will that go? It won't be enough for anyone. And this isn't even rock bottom yet. The bottom is still ahead. This is just the very beginning of the fuel crisis. Those who realize this have already left Crimea because in winter everything there will collapse. There will be no electricity, no heat, and consequently no food, nothing at all, no fuel. And it won't be funny at all. And Putin clearly won't have time for Crimea because he'll have to save Muscovites from a blackout. By the way, why isn't Gazprom making videos this year about Europe freezing without Russian gas? What do you think? Maybe it's because Gazprom is bankrupt. What is all this for? I came across a poll where Russians were asked what, if any, are the benefits for them from this war, if you can even phrase it that way. Has anything at all gotten better for them? And in the comments, generally speaking, there are many standard idiotic answers like, the country has risen from its knees, Russians have united. Well, that's all understandable. Those are Putin's squads. But there is one answer. They cleared the country of convicts and criminals, of prisoners and criminals. And under that answer, a whole thread unfolded with examples of how the prisoners, whom they supposedly got rid of, signed a contract, returned as heroes in quotation marks, and what they are doing after that within the Russian Federation. That is, in essence, they didn't get rid of the prisoners, but on the contrary, endowed them with the status of heroes, obviously in quotation marks, and taught those who didn't know how to handle weapons before to do so, returned them to society. There is an important nuance here. Before this, the prisoners were sitting in prison. Who were they bothering there in prison? And Putin set them free, pardoned them. Another important nuance is that the human trash who went to kill Ukrainians for money will turn out to be 100 times more dangerous than any prisoners when they return home. That is, in essence, you didn't get rid of the prisoners, you released them from prisons and endowed them with an exceptional and special right. It turns out that in Russia, on the contrary, the number of antisocial individuals has increased manifold, and they have even been taught how to handle weapons. Oh, and one more piece of good news today. Literally half an hour before I started recording this episode, 10 more of our warriors returned from captivity today. I wish everyone who is waiting for their loved ones to see them return. Remember, by the way, I said that Russian propagandists have been feeling a bit down lately. Not just feeling down, but they are also taking hits right now. Kremlin propagandist Kiselyov is leaving Vesti Nedeli. This parasite had been hosting the Vesti Nedeli program for 14 years. Instead of him, the host there will be Evgeny Popov, another propagandist. And earlier Telegram channels wrote that the presidential administration was very unhappy with Kiselyov. And here, everything is simple. This is after all very, very logical. Dictators never in their lives admit their own mistakes, even if he has messed up, bogged down in an absolutely senseless war. There will always be someone else to blame. Always. It will be the Russians' fault because they don't want to go and die en masse for Putin. Or the propagandists who perhaps didn't work well enough or didn't convince Russians enough from their TV screens, working without any spark. But Putin will never admit that it was he who unleashed a senseless war and that he is the one to blame for ruining Russia. And when they start writing off propagandists, even seasoned ones like Kiselyov, who previously suited everyone just fine, that is exactly what indicates that another step toward the edge of the abyss has been taken. And it's a signal to other propagandists, work better, work more actively. How was it that Putin hissed from the podium? You need to be bolder, bolder, even bolder. By the way, that very same Kiselyov, who wanted to turn everyone into radioactive ash, will end up in the dustbin of history himself. Or maybe he decided to slip away quietly. He might pop up somewhere in the Middle East now, who knows. Armenia intends to begin the process of applying for European Union membership in the near future. Nikol Pashinyan announced this. So an official application, Armenia is going to submit it. And at the same time, Pashinyan stated that we do not intend to return to the CSTO in the next 5 years. And if they exclude us from there altogether, I will be very glad. They are running from Putin as if he were a leper. That is, everyone who is currently cooperating with the Russian Federation falls into only two categories. These are either those who are making good money off of a sanctioned Russia, or dictators who are forced to hold hands so that they don't get their asses kicked one by one. Moreover, Putin can't even keep the dictators in his friendly orbit. Or rather, he is no longer capable of helping them. Russia has become so weak it is occupied with its own problems. How could he possibly look towards Syria? Maduro and Assad can confirm this, by the way. And if it weren't for China, I think Putin and his buddy Kim Jong-un would have been sitting in The Hague a long time ago. And what's more, their own people would have definitely turned them in. Well, I don't know about Kim Jong-un, but the bald muskrat would definitely have been turned in by his own people. And another interesting point, the mustachioed pro-Kremlin mouthpiece Peskov crawled out from under the bed and stated that actually Armenia had not previously planned to withdraw from the CSTO. But if they are planning to, then they should remember that Turkey has been waiting for its place in the European Union for a very, very long time. That's what Peskov said. And who is even asking you? How does it concern you where Armenia is going and how long they want or don't want to wait? That is their business. You should get your own house in order in the swamps before you start giving advice. And by the way, a good systemic piece came out in the Wall Street Journal about what Putin is planning to do in the near future and that he has almost no trump cards or moves left. Well, I mean, they are all very limited. The moves that are available could lead to increased turbulence within the Russian Federation itself and, well, Russia will be shaken and feverish. And this will happen in the near future, literally in the coming months. In general, the Wall Street Journal, citing Western intelligence, reports something that, in principle, we have probably already understood. Putin simply has no other choice. The question of mobilization is not whether it will happen or not, whether it will or won't. The question is how it will be carried out. And look at the curious details here. Last month, military personnel from St. Petersburg arrived in the Kaliningrad region specifically not to fight, but to train, to work out logistics, where to house the mobilized, what to feed them, and how to arm them. In other words, it's not just some one-off inspection. The system is physically preparing to receive a flow of occupiers, even if there is no political decision yet. Well, in other words, mobilization drills, roughly speaking. It is clear that there is no talk of any mobilization before the pseudo-elections, and there won't be one in the classic sense either. That is, the underground creep won't be announcing it out loud, especially not on camera, like last time. They will drag it out in small portions, without any public noise. And Michael Kaufman from Carnegie says outright that if the goal for this year had been to capture the Donbass, then mobilization should have been launched several months ago. So, what kind of breakthrough are we talking about this year then? It is clear that Putin won't be taking any Donbass either by autumn or by the end of the year. So the Kremlin isn't deciding whether to mobilize or not, they are currently just deciding how to do it quietly. Let me remind you, Putin's losses are already exceeding replacements, they simply have no other choice. The underground undead are thinking about how to package all this so that Russians don't flee the Russian Federation. And yet, they will flee. Look at what is happening at the border right now. I saw footage today from the Russian-Georgian border. There are gigantic queues there. So, some people have already decided not to wait, and somewhere in the Kremlin another strategist has drawn up a plan on how to launch this non-public quiet mobilization. Let me tell you, how do they even calculate and forecast anything there at all? I mean, if they had calculated and forecasted even the slightest thing, they would never in their lives have attacked Ukraine. Can you imagine that while planning a war like this? And let me remind you, initially, this wasn't supposed to be a war. It was supposed to be a limited, short operation, a lightning strike, the seizure of the Hostomel airfield, landing military transport planes there, and capturing Bankova Street. And then they would just bring in Yanukovych on a stick, so to speak, and show him off in the square. In other words, they miscalculated literally everything, but most importantly, they miscalculated the Ukrainian reaction to this invasion. And I think they had been planning this invasion for definitely more than a year. So we have a rough idea of what they are planning again in their folders with ribbons. But if we look at the dynamics in the context of Ukraine's capabilities, those capabilities are actually growing. And the arsenal of means to inflict pain on the Bold One and his gang, this elderly community, is definitely growing. And Russia will definitely live to see the moment when Ukrainian ballistics with a warhead of over a ton starts wiping everything out on their territory. As for you, friends, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Let's help our warriors. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. Have a peaceful day, everyone, and glory to Ukraine.